Our first presentation deals with improving consumer engagement and driving ROI in the stay-at-home economy. Our presenters are Stefan Zoder, VP of Value Consulting for Reltio, and Swati Sinha, Senior Director of Product Marketing for Reltio. Swati, please take it away.
Thanks, John, and good morning, everyone. So we are 6 months into this world of uncertainties due to COVID-19. And like all of us, the businesses didn't have a playbook to deal with it. The only positive thing I see is that it made us realize that how resilient we are, and so are the businesses. So small businesses have found a way to adapt to new normal, like restaurants have moved to outdoor seatings, gyms have started conducting classes in the park, and so on. So while uncertainties continues, one thing is certain, that consumer behavior has changed. Even the companies who were at the edge of deciding whether to go for digital transformation have accelerated their projects. Organizations are finding ways to improve consumer engagement in stay-at-home economy. And that brings us to the topic of our today's session, improving consumer engagement and driving ROI in the stay-at-home economy. My name is Swati Sinha. I'm a Senior Director in Product Marketing at Reltio, and joining me is Stefan Zoder, VP Value Consulting at Reltio. During this session, if you want to engage with us, you can do it via Data for CX, hashtag Data for CX. Let's get to the agenda. Today, we are going to touch on following industry trends, discuss how to survive and thrive in current situations. Then we will deep dive on how you can improve your CX footprint within the organization, the importance of connected profiles, industry use cases, and followed by a short demo, and how can you get started. We will also leave some time at the end for the Q&A. So let's start with this poll. I will give you a few minutes. So which technology is the highest priority for your organization to drive digital transformation? Okay, so we all can see that it is what we are talking about. Everything is moving to digital. So as I mentioned earlier, the world of business has changed. The stay-at-home economy has seen a major shift, and which we saw on the poll also on the online spending. The recent research, in fact, from 451 groups in April showed the same. 4 out of 5 consumers have shifted their spending to online. So what does this mean for the CPG companies? Well, it will change the business strategies. Consistent and personalized experience across all channels will be key to win and retain shoppers. Shoppers' path to purchase may not be linear, but they expect a consistent experience from start to finish. So predicting your shopper's next best action and hyper-personalizing the point of engagement will give you a competitive edge. So this raises the next question. How do you do it? Well, I like to refer to this great report by McKinsey. What they talk over here is 3-step growth process CPG companies should follow. Predict, rebound, and transform and sustain. Since the past is no longer a predictor of the future demand, right? Because everything has changed, all the customer behavior has changed. So they suggest 3 basic principles. The first, the buying behavior has changed. So for some of the analytic applications which you have, old data might not provide accurate insight. And you will need the latest consumer data. But on the other hand, there will be some application where the old data is still relevant. So companies still need to provide contextual data for the various applications they have based on the need. Next one is harnessing the wide range of data. So the number of data sources is directly proportional to the accuracy of consumer insights you derive from it. And these data sources should also include data like interaction and transaction, which provide the recent and most up-to-date information of your consumer or your target segment. And finally, to deliver this end-to-end experience, you need the holistic data to get actionable insight to hyper-personalize your consumer journey. But how do you do all this? Well, by transforming your organization. So Stefan, would you like to walk us through the typical CX footprint, the organization, and how it can be transformed to deliver this engaging consumer experience?
Sure, Swati, thank you. So let's look at the application landscape as it looks like today for most of you from a high level and a more holistic point of view that you're probably used to, which typically supports your digital transformation to make the customer experience more hyper-personalized and the engagement more meaningful. So on the bottom right here, you have your on-premise or cloud-based analytics data stores. You may have an SAP ADW, an Amazon Redshift instance, a Cloudera data lake. It doesn't really matter. Many of these lakes are nevertheless fairly murky, as the data quality is not the top concern here to this day. Plus, these applications are licensed based on data volume, so the murkier really the better, at least from a vendor point of view. These applications are all about collecting as much time series data as possible and let the data scientists deal with the data prep required to commingle this data with some of your CRM data and then apply some Python machine learning model to drive next best actions. On the bottom left, you have your third-party data from social media, the web, and if you're lucky, some customer self-service data from your app. This data makes engagement more real-time and contextual. On the top of the gray bar, you have a traditional enterprise stack. Anything from point-of-sale systems, the ERP stack, some vendor relationship and location management systems if you have physical outlets. You will also manage your product data in your product lifecycle management and your CAD/CAM systems. You also prep pieces of these systems in your product information management system to publish your web catalog. CAD/CAM, not traditionally put in the CX realm, uses or should use customer survey data to implement sourcing and product design changes. Product quality concerns are also informing sourcing changes in the SRM application. And then we have the traditional custom engagement technologies. There's the good old CRM IVR combo, as well as the campaign automation tools and a loyalty database, if you have a loyalty program, which may often be managed by a third party. All of this rides on a data orchestration infrastructure or backbone, which may be a proven message bus or a modern iPaaS solution. You can imagine that without a central customer master driving a consistent, coherent, clean set of transactions, like an order versus an order paid with loyalty points from the app versus the physical store, or a service request from a chatbot or a representative, or any other process spanning more than two applications requiring validation by other departments in the process value chain is an absolute nightmare. Process integrity is degrading, requiring consistent rework and frequent cleanups on aisle 2. With customer data quality being lagging across many organizations, and you will hear this also from analysts like Tom Redman or Dave Logen, the value squandered is in the tens of millions for a decent-sized organization. Providing a real-time customer master lookup capability in the cloud that ties key data points like households, locations, products, and their interactions across all channels together is key. It reduces account profile creation time and rework drastically, protects your top line, and protects you also from risk. This is a fundamental capability to ensure increasingly frequent, contextual, and meaningful engagement. So we just talked about the lack of, before we go on here, let's take a quick survey here. So please give us your response here on, according to what percentage of digital transformation success depends on good customer data? Let's just give this a few seconds here. We're going more towards the higher end, which is what was to be expected. That's great news. So the vast majority of you actually believe it's 70% up to 100% or more. Great news. All right. So this is what we came out with. Again, this is a great piece of news, and I think we're all on the same page here. All right, let's move on here. So we just talked about the lack of fidelity in customer or consumer profiles. Now let's expand the scope and become a little bit more strategic. Ask yourself, how much does my organization earmark this year and next year to fix our customer data challenges? What will this investment deliver in terms of top or bottom line results? Also ask yourself, how acquisitive has my organization been over the last few years, and what about the next few years as my competitors struggle with shifting their business to digital commerce, especially in the day and age of COVID-19? Am I ready to buy my competitor and quickly integrate this data to get the revenue and cost synergies I promised my investors? Do we even know what our current customers bought in terms of product, where they live, what they buy from me, or what shipments get delivered to what address? Where do they hang out digitally? Where's my best fit, or at least geographically closest sales channel? Another aspect to consider here is marketing consent. You need to reach out to the right person with the right contact details at the right time to the best channel, but you cannot violate their consent under GDPR or CCPA. Most organizations have figured this out to a degree by posting their privacy policy and opt-in as soon as you hit the website. However, do you have the means to collect it from other channels? How do you synchronize updates across all product lines, applications, and channels? Without a connected customer 360, you can't, or you can do it, but with a lot of manual coding effort. This is important as you're paying for third-party data feeds on top of this from places like Axiom, Nielsen, Epsilon, and so on, to enrich your context and validate some of this information. You also get feeds from your retail partners. Can you merge this data easily? Can you use it to enrich your profiles effectively? Think about demographics, warranty registrations, delivery requests, and so on. Can you do all this without accidentally overriding your clean data that you already have? But once you have all this data, do you really have insight? I would argue that many don't to this day. They cannot predict how customers make decisions, who influences the decision, say a household member, what the key criteria are, and what is at risk of churning. Who is at risk of churning. Do you have a statistical twin even for your client segments in terms of the ideal journey from being unaware as a consumer to doing research, to ordering, to using the product, to actually getting the product serviced, and even renewing in another purchase? These are all great questions and use cases, but the reality is that without a central, connected, scalable, and I can't emphasize this enough, scalable, usable for the business primarily, accessible and trusted source of customer data, all these use cases will, well, let's say fail, or they will at least fall short of the expectations. At the very least, they will keep your turnaround time to make compelling offers and keep engagement high fairly static, or at least it will be lagging behind interactions and in the life events of your consumers. As a digital marketing manager who came from the specialty foods industry and who now works in the appliance industry told me once, speed today is everything. Quality, in this case data quality, is table stakes. Customer engagement is only possible if you master both realms. So before I pass the baton back to Swati, let me just pick a few war stories I ran into over the last couple of years. Let me start with the top left one. This is a great legacy company who really jumped into the digital transformation journey. By aggregating the enterprise account and consumer purchases and consumable reorders on top of integrating sensor data, it is now able to have a much higher and predictable revenue projection, on which basis, incidentally, the service departments are budgeted from. Oh, there we go. Overall, they were able to reduce their spend on the legacy environment by over $12 million just by looking at hardware and software cost takeout. Let's look at the green box here. Granted, it's a restaurant chain, but I've seen a similar setup in the automotive OEM and the aftermarket parts space. They tried to port the paper-based loyalty program to a digital version by using an outside party to administer it. They only found out that turnaround time to make changes to the program was extremely slow and very expensive, and the overall performance created 1-hour outages every month, which in this case is worth $1 million because it is affecting tens of thousands of patrons. They also found out that they were sitting on millions of duplicate profiles, which cost a fortune just to maintain, on top of driving inaccurate investment decisions. The third example is on the top right here is from the fashion industry. We see excess marketing spent here all the time when syndicated sources are overly relied on, overriding profiles in a black box fashion. Then data analysts have to manually review and unmerge these records. Plus, the firm spent excess funds every month to get the latest feed requesting records it already has a high degree of data integrity for, because consumers have recently validated their contact information at the store or online. Let's switch to the bottom left here in the orange. This is an appliance manufacturer. Let's just peel out the IT OpEx in this one, because there's now a trusted data source of B2B or account and B2C profiles, also known as consumer profiles. The various analytic teams can now use a unique enterprise-wide use identifier to pull data from multiple transactional systems to build and change the operational and financial planning dashboards. Okay, let's switch gears a little bit and go on the supply chain side. This is about aligning location with customer and vendor information in a garment retailer. Because this company couldn't align its own department and web-based store sales with its fairly sophisticated globetrotting consumer base, merchandising allocation was slow and it was a manual process to reassign replenishment shipments, resulting in out-of-stock situations, forcing customers and service center reps to cancel orders. Just as important is the ways around marketing and promotional funds allocated for each division aligned with unachievable demand projections because of this merchandising misallocation. Lastly, we have a beauty and clothing company. This now goes into the realm of design and development of new concepts and products. This is all about what size bottle, what color blouse to order overseas. Understanding demographic shifts and correlating them to demand signals across channels is the alchemy left to the data science gurus. Again, the ability to have statistically significant patterns emerge relies heavily on good data quality, as any data scientist will tell you. Statisticians rely on this data. This is why the largest chunk of their work is dedicated to data preparation. You reduce this effort, you can accelerate your product release cycle, run quicker tests, make changes, and release your idea into the wild. You can go from a handful of such development cycles and product release cycles in a year to the same number in just a month. So just to recap, what you want is trusted, enriched, unambiguous, valid, and these days very timely customer data accessible to the business user. Swati, can you show the good folks how we do this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Stefan. Those are really good use cases. So before I start the demo, let me explain how it really works, what Stefan was talking about. The blue cloud over here is our Reltio platform, where we build a connected consumer profile in 6 easy steps, and I will show you how we do it on our demo system. But first of all, what we do is we consolidate all the consumer data across all the touch points, including internal, external, and third-party data sources. This is where we match and merge and create our master data profile. After this, we go beyond a typical MDM and enrich it with previous transactions or interaction consumers have had with your organization. And then with the connected graph technology, you can discover and establish all the relationships to understand how this consumer is related to a household, to a product, to an organization, or to a device. And once we have all this data together, you can derive the actionable insights from this information and add it back to, and it is also added back to the profile as an attribute for more advanced analysis. And while we are doing that, as Stefan has been mentioning, we must comply with all the privacy requirements, simplify the consent management, understand the communication preferences, and adhere to the emerging regulations. And last but not the least, share the information with the business users. All the information is not required or needed or even used by all functional groups. So sales need different information, then a compliance team, then a marketing team, then the field service or call center. So you must create a contextual profile. And as I mentioned earlier, that even some of your old application might not need all of the data. So you must create that contextual information for each application. So now when you have all this rich information of the consumer, you are ready to go. So in this real time, if you see over here, the consumer actually comes to browse the website. And you may not have much information about them, perhaps a cookie, but again, we have analyzed in past all the interaction that they have had. So if they have used the same device and we have the device ID or a cookie, we know this person is. And once we identify the person, now you have all the rich information available in the real time to hyper-personalize the engagement, and you can engage with them. So now let me quickly go to the demo. Start sharing. And here. So let me first show how easy it is with Reltio. So let me start by showing you what a connected consumer profile look like as a result of the complete all 6 steps. So this is Sarah, and this is a consumer profile she has. You can see her first name, full name. You can see her channel communication consent over here, devices she is using, the family member, and the consumer insight, which we were talking about, all the insights and actionable insight we have. You can also see the past purchases, which are the past transactions she had and all the relationships. So again, what I mentioned, the 6 steps, how we do it, let's see that. So first was bringing together all the data. So what you see over here on the right is various data sources from what we get and match and merge the profile. So this is all third-party data, internal, external, every data you have social. So over here you can see we have legacy and MDM, we have point of sales, we have Reltio, we have website, we have mobile app. So all the data you can get here. Other thing you might have seen is the color coding. So each and every data source is color coded. So you can hover on them and you can see what data you are getting from which source over here. So like for example, from the point of sales, you can see her full name, first name and last name, whereas if we go towards the, if we check the website data, you can see that we are getting her address, we are getting her email, so you can see it is all green and color coded. The other thing what you can do is, so this is a profile, but what you also want to do is define the business rule or the survivorship rule we say. Like for example, if you see first name, right, there are 7 sources which have provided you the name, first name. Which one do you want to use, right? So they are predefined, some of the predefined rules which we have, or you can create your own rule. So like for example, over here we decided for the first name, we will go with the source system. Whereas if you see for the phone, we have done the frequency. And the reason is like, if you are getting a number which is frequently used from the different sources the same, we try to put that one. Okay, on to the next one. So this is actually where most of the MDM providers will provide you, match, merge, and provide you the data. Other thing you will also observe is legacy MDM, and you wonder why, because sometimes you might not be ready to transfer. So Reltio provides you a way that you can also use one of the data sources as your legacy MDM. Okay, now going beyond MDM, where Reltio provides you a true connected customer 360. And the second step is enriching with the master data profile, which you just created, with interaction and transaction data to to provide more up-to-date information. And so over here, you can see all these recent transactions Sarah had with Pampers. And it is really important to have this real-time information to provide personalized experience. So I'll give you an example. For example, a customer has bought a smart exercising equipment, and they are having trouble setting it up. And while they're working with your customer support team to resolve that, if your marketing team sends them an email, hope you're enjoying your new equipment, and here's a discounted offer for a virtual class, it will be really frustrating for them because you appear oblivious of their problem. So it is really important in case when you're hyper-personalizing all the engagement that you know the recent interaction you have with them. Now let's go to the third step, which is all about discovering all the relationships and understand how your consumer is related. For example, over here, if you go and see, this is a purchased product. Last purchase, the product that they bought. This is a household over here. You can see household member. You can also see over here, like for example, this is a family member. So it is very important to understand how the person is connected and what is the relationship. Now I'll give you another simple example over here. Let's say a customer bought a yoga pant as a gift for his wife. So in future, his wife should be getting the offers for the female yoga pant and not him. So this is only possible if you're able to connect that people in the household. So it's really important to understand who is your buyer who's actually using the product. Let's go to the fourth step, which we talked about, is a consumer insight. And this we get by feeding in the enriched consumer profile, which we have built in now with the machine learning environment and derive actionable insight. So here in this case, what you will see is product recommendation based on Sarah's purchase history. We know that next recommended product is Pampers Splasher. And we can also calculate the propensity score, which is basically tells what is the likelihood of her making this purchase. So these insights, if you see, are very relevant to hyper-personalize your consumer engagement to give them what they want instead of just giving a generic offer. So let's go to the fifth step, which is basically about managing the compliance and the privacy law. And as we all are aware, right, the privacy is becoming increasingly important for a consumer. And it is different by country and region. So for example, Europe, there are strict privacy laws with GDPR. California has CCPA, and you never know, probably some future privacy law that are currently in the books as well. But it is important to have consent visibility in the consumer profile to plan your campaign. So over here, what you can see is a multi-channel consent privacy preferences. And in this case, what you can see is as per the brand, for the Pampers, what is my consent? Like, what are my communication preferences, channel, when do I want to be communicated, and so on. So you have all the information over here as based on brand and the communication preferences for that brand. And finally, what I want to show you is what we talked about, contextual information for each and every application. So it's about creating that view for the view of connected customer 360, which we build, and harmonizing it, what as Stefan mentioned, for each analytical application based on the business need. And as you can see over here, we actually have some different contextual views of consumer for marketing, sales, finance, and compliance, and it's based on their requirements. So for example, your marketing team can use a first name for the campaign, but finance will need the full name for the contract, right? So Okay, so you saw how easy it is to create the consumer profile here. So are you guys ready? Let me hand it back to Stefan to tell you guys how to get started.
All right, thanks, Swati. So I know that some of you on the phone and on the conference right now are in a consulting business. So I wanted to spend some time on telling all of you as either the potential buyers of such a solution or the implementers of such a solution, or people who just give advice on why this type of solution is a must-have these days, to give you a sense of advice in terms of how to start this project. So you now have seen how the application looks and feels. You have an idea of what it does. You also know what use cases it helps enable and the value associated with these use cases. You can also put it in context on how it enables an organization to support a stay-at-home economy. So again, let's boil this down to basics. Let's talk about the best practices. So how do you get such an initiative funded and executed? How do you minimize project risk? As in every other IT project, you have to find a sponsor. And in this case, I cannot say this or stress this enough, I highly recommend engaging a business executive. The earlier, the better. The business must lead it. Let me say this again, the business must lead it. This is not an IT-led project, or at least it shouldn't be. We've seen a higher degree of delay, project delay and rollout delay, and failure if it is a purely IT-led data quality type of project. So to find a sponsor, people then ask me, so how do I do this? How do I get to the right sponsorship on the business side? Well, there's two different ways you can do this. One is you can see who has the most at stake from poor customer data in terms of the legacy or new product revenue that they have their personal career, tied to, or the compensation. The second one is who is complaining the most about the data situation today, and those might again not be the same people sometimes. Then again, as it is customary, or at least it should be, please follow the land and expand model. Don't try to go big bang by implementing every use case for every business user, for every department that you may have a relationship with. This is typically not a good thing to do. And again, this holds true for many other IT type projects as well. So then I would say find a sweet spot that is fairly low on the complexity side. Maybe do some address enrichment, create a unique identifier across 3, 4, 5 applications. That is typically low on the complexity side. But it is still meaningful enough in terms of value that's at stake. However, don't forget the long-term view of impacting the total enterprise. So again, take a short-term tactical view, but also keep the longer picture in every single conversation you have with your business stakeholders in mind. To do so, you need to capture the qualitative benefits that you might get from such a project, but you also have to quantify them as much as you can in terms of today's processes and maybe future processes that might require some changing based on some of the findings in the data that you run into. And because all these things ultimately will impact your stakeholders' KPIs. So as I said earlier, if you are in IT, engage the business earlier than you're typically comfortable with, and document how to interact with the data on a daily basis. So the next one is a bit of a doozy. Folks have to understand that a master data management repository in itself is just another data source. By itself, it creates no value. It just costs money because it just stood up a new repository. Granted, it has amazingly high quality data, maybe super timely data, but again, it just stood up another data pod. The activation of the value really comes from integrating it with downstream applications, analytical applications that I mentioned on the slide earlier, or operational systems like CRM, campaign tools, apps, whatever it may be. You have to plan to integrate the full value chain of a process. If you're waiting for the business to realize what great data pool you just built, and you hope they will come, they typically won't. I see this approach occasionally, and again, I've never seen this work out. The build it and they will come paradigm has not worked in my experience at all. So historically speaking, MDM or master data management applications were feeding analytical applications, or at the very least, it was the first phase of every project. This is table stakes today, okay? In this on-demand world where everybody shops online, consumes online, does research online, and you have to be very engaging, it is about serving real-time updates to accommodate high-touch consumer engagement. Digital leaders in every space out there are developing real-time use cases, either from the get-go in the first phase, or at least in parallel with the analytical use cases. So let me wrap up by saying again, data is and should primarily be a business concern. To this day, this requires a cultural rethink in many organizations. You can have the shiniest or cheapest tool to address your data challenges. If you don't train your users and enable them to interact with the data as they're used to in their private life using smartphone apps, your adoption will suffer. And this ultimately jeopardizes the value activation. So thanks again for joining us today, and let's go on to our Q&A now.
Okay, Stefan and Swati, we have a couple of questions that have come in. One, what were some of the motivations for your customers to go with cloud platform versus on-premise versus DIY?
Okay, Swati, I can take this. So there's a few different motivational reasons. So one would be they just follow a cloud-first strategy. So they have embarked on, porting their enterprise, their warehouse to the cloud, their CRM system to the cloud, to a cloud-native environment, like a Salesforce, let's say, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? So they now have seen the benefits of it, and they will ultimately choose a cloud-native platform over any on-premise or hosted solution from the get-go. So that's motivation number one. So it's more of a strategic setup. The second reason is more tactical, right? We all are suffering through cutbacks, working with few IT resources, people staying at home, people being furloughed, and so forth. So total cost of ownership. So doing the same with less, or ideally more with less, is a key reason for CIOs these days, or chief marketing officers even, to switch to a cloud model. Because again, the annual or biannual upgrades that you would typically have to pay for in an on-premise solution costing hundreds of thousands of dollars are just not there in a cloud-native model. The rollouts are typically quicker. So again, the time to first value, as we say, on the ongoing cost is just somewhere between 30 to 40% lower. And this is not my data. This is typically, very widely available as a data point on the web. And then there are even more tactical reasons, right, where people try to, get their toe in the water and then see the benefit of having, for example, this unique identifier for their billing system, their CRM, or their loyalty database suddenly across all brands. And then they jump in much deeper and look for other use cases. Again, this is why I mentioned earlier, having a broader enterprise long-term view as well. So getting your toe in the water and then broadening it up is, again, something that is fairly easily activated in a cloud environment versus in a traditional on-premise kind of delivery model. I'll keep it at that for now.
Okay, great. We have one more question. What timeline could we expect to see some tangible operational results from an investment in our consumer data?
Wow. I guess that's my wheelhouse again. So I work with clients across industries, but very recently a lot in the consumer product space. And it really depends. It depends on the maturity of the organization, your business model, your cost structure, the overall market size that you're addressing with your products and services. So it really depends. But in general, and this is a very generalized statement, again, this speaks again to the cloud model. I would say most organizations and most decision makers, on the business side, sales, marketing, finance, also on the IT side, chief data officer, CIO, they're looking for a break-even point somewhere between, I would say, 6 to 12, maybe 14 months. If you cannot deliver this, then you have a hard time justifying the initial acquisition even of this kind of software, or this kind of service basically, and also, getting the necessary attention from the enterprise who has to all chip in because they're all using the same data pod now of, proven, trusted, real-time customer data. Again, it varies, the use case spread, the scope, but again, I would say I've seen it as fast as 4 months. I've seen longer ones, but again, on average, I would say that the whole investment should really come through somewhere between, again, 6 to 12, 14 months maybe.
Okay, well, thank you, Stefan. Thank you, Swati. Those are all the questions we had. Let's see now, for anybody who would, we have another slide up there about learning more. Learning more about this presentation, we have an email address you can write to there, and also watch, read, or go deeper. In addition, you can reach out to Stefan and Swati directly. Their contact information will be on the screen right now. Swati Sinha and Stefan Zoder, their email address is on the screen. Thank you both for a very interesting presentation, and we'll proceed to the next presentation shortly.
Thank you, John. Thanks for inviting us.